Retrogrades.
How to re-evangelize the de-Christianized West.
Support us in any way you can, most especially by your prayers.
From an authentically Catholic perspective.
Right-minded, righteous group that's equal in strength to the radicals.
From an authentically masculine perspective.
You and your friends versus me and my friends. Bring it on. Welcome to Rules for Retrogrades. I'm Tim Gordon with Chris Plants and Dave Gordon. Today we bring to you, the Rules for Retrogrades viewer, a special guest, Dr. Taylor Marshall. What's up, Taylor?
Hey, little TNT plus R4N.
Yeah, R4N plus TNT plus C plus D. Yeah, it's catchy. It rolls right off the tongue. How are you doing, man? We've been texting this whole time, but people think we haven't.
Right, yeah. People think that we're in like a spat or something, but Rules for Retrograde is going well. I've watched some of the shows, and I like it. I like the different perspectives, and you guys are doing a bang-up job, so I raised the vegan O to you.
Thanks, man. I raised the vegan O to you.
I appreciate that, Clark. Christmas vacation reference in honor of Thanksgiving coming up.
Yeah, Taylor, so we have a lot to talk about, man. I feel a little bit like, I don't know, when Jim and Pam were split and they weren't able to talk about Dwight and Angela,
right.
Then they got back together and they're like, man, we have so much to talk about. So much has happened over the last 5 weeks, not to mention, to say nothing of Tesheguel, the idol dunker who you spent a week at Disneyland with or whatever. You guys were going all around.
Yeah, Tesheguel is just he's in London right now. He's just making a world tour.
Yeah, he's globetrotting, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's just a lot has happened over the last 5 weeks. Of course, the Amazon Synod, and man, what a nightmare that was. But we're mainly bringing you on here to talk about a few things. You wanted to talk 6 months after Infiltration came out, and I said that would be great because so much has happened to really vindicate this book. In not only, I think in June or so, we had Archbishop Vigano re-vindicating your book, rededicating your book, and now the Amazon Synod just makes it, I think, that much more relevant. So I'd like to talk to you about that today, and Chris and Dave. But also we had another charge this late in the game, I think last week, by our friend Trent Horn over at Catholic Answers, charged you with conspiracy theory, and me too. I mean, he was dripping with this when I was in the studios, but he's a nice guy. I think we both respect his body of work. What's going on there? Why do we?
I mean, he's got a good name. His name is Trent, so you got to like that right off the bat. And his show is called Council of Trent, but a lot of what he teaches doesn't follow the Council of Trent. And I think, I listened to your debate with him on the death penalty, and you were right on point, man. It was a good debate for you. And I Trent's a nice guy, but I think he may be a little bit wounded. Everybody saw that. And then which was the debate where he said doctrine can change? Was that the death penalty?
It was feminism. Yeah,
that was feminism. Okay.
In death penalty, he said that intrinsic evil can be historically conditioned, so as bad or worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's just problematic, and we've all liked Catholic Answers. I've been on Catholic Answers many times back in the day, I was on there in the Patrick Coffin days. So that would have been 15, 16, something like that.
16. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think people are kind of concerned because, it's a difficult road. If you're going to defend the Francis pontificate and you're going to play interdiocesan politics with Bishop McElroy, it's going to be difficult to steer that and I think stay true to the historic traditional Catholic faith, the deposit that was given by Christ and the apostles received to this day. It's a hard time to be a Catholic and to balance all of this under the Francis pontificate. So I think they're just really struggling and trying to navigate that. And unfortunately, that brings them into say things that are a little bit off. And I think your debate showed that. And then I don't know why, out of nowhere, Trent comes after me on Twitter, and bashes infiltration and says conspiracy theory. I would just challenge him, and I'd be happy to debate him. I think it'd be fun, especially after listening to your debates. I'd love to debate him and say, okay, what in the book is a conspiracy theory? Because in the beginning of the book, I quote several popes who used the term conspiracy.
Yeah.
It's not, Taylor Marshall or Tim Gordon or Rules for Retrogrades or anybody or Schneider or Bishop Strickland, all these radical people on the right. It's popes. It's Leo the 13th. It's Gregory the 16th. It's, Pius the 9th, Pius the 10th. This is where the language is coming from. So if you're going to come after that, you're actually going after popes.
They'll never address that. They will never address it's a shadow banning with regard to the popes that queued this all up and said, we want Catholics to read these texts.
Right.
Isn't Infiltration the only source where you can get the entire Alta Vendita in English?
You can get it online for free.
Okay.
There is a site out there that has the English, but I published it in the back. John Veneri publishes it, but it's abridged. It's not the whole thing. But yeah, you can get it in the appendix. And I updated the English version came from the it's either early 1900s, late 1800s by a Monsignor. So there are a few archaic phrases in there that I checked with the Italian and updated a little bit. But yeah, the full English is in there. And I mean, look, if the Alta Vendita is real, and I think it is, if Our Lady of La Salette is real, and I think it is, if the Secrets of Fatima are real, I think they are, even if you put in a parentheses 3B, you have Our Lady saying that there's going to be some kind of negative internal struggle in the church.
Right.
So to come around in 2019, after the Amazon Synod, after when you have idols in front of the altar at St. Peter's, and to say, no, there's no conspiracy. People who say that are crazy, tinfoil hat. I don't see how anyone with a rational mind right now in 2019 can say we have not had an over 100-year infiltration conspiracy, to use the language of the popes.
Right.
I just don't see. I don't see where Trent is getting that. I think Trent is feeling a little bit wounded, and I think he wants to go after someone to kind of make himself feel better. But I don't see how he can substantiate what he's bringing forward.
You saw what I said to him. I said, Trent, come on. That comment was neither nice nor apposite, because it was neither. But I mean, there are a couple things in there. I'm not sure that he was claiming that he wasn't referring to your book, so I don't buy it.
He said that? He said that?
He was saying that what you were peddling, I think, about the video itself was conspiracy. It was clearly a glancing blow reference to your book.
Are you talking about the video about the fight, like at the elementary school or charter school or whatnot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that was the impetus for all of this, is my understanding.
It was bizarre. And
so he was saying that he was talking about the video and not the book?
He responded.
No. He was talking about the book.
You think he's explicitly owning that he was talking about the book? Everyone was like, what the heck, man? It was a ratio piece. And then I thought he made some backing away statement, backing away so fast he was moonwalking type statement that he, to the effect that, no, I wasn't referring to the book. I was referring to this video. Maybe who's to say? Right. In a relativistic world, in today's Catholic Answers world, who's really to say? But Taylor, are you still are you bracketing 3B in your own mind? We haven't talked about this even.
Oh no, I'm 3B all the way. I'm just saying, even if I granted to someone, if I just said to someone who said 3B doesn't exist, even if we granted that, you still have historical evidence from at least 3 popes, Our Lady of La Salette, and everything else we have in Fatima.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm all 3B.
Okay.
Everything that you and I, Tim, you and I did, I think 4 or 5 videos.
We did a lot.
We did a lot of Fatima videos. I think one of the most popular videos that we ever did might actually be the Fatima, one of the Fatima videos.
Yeah,
No, we did a lot of research, and I think we demonstrated it thoroughly on our videos together that there is a 3B. I don't know, Chris and Dave, y'all believe in 3B?
Dave, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. We both inhaled pensively at the same moment. So, I've withheld judgment. As of right now, I would lean actually no because of what Sister Lucia has said later on, and she's been explicit at times. I guess that's what is preventing me from making the leap, is just that the seer herself, Sister Lucia, came out and was like, well, this is the fullness of the secret. Although those words haunt me, and I've often pondered upon them, that the dogma of the faith will always be preserved in Portugal. So it's shrouded in mystery still, but I'd say at this point I definitely lean towards the third secret has been fully revealed. And I even asked, I in Steubenville, I had some time, and Bishop Schneider came and gave a talk, and I asked him at the talk about the third secret of Fatima and whether he thought that it had been fully divulged to us. And he said, I'd like to think that the church would not be keeping this from us. So I'm paraphrasing here, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering your words, good bishop. But that, yes, I believe that the church has released it in its entirety, something to that effect.
I'm not sure. I think I lean the other way. After reading what's his name's book, what is
Sochi.
it?
Sochi.
Yeah,
Dave
Sochi.
hasn't read Sochi. Yeah.
Yeah, so Sochi is really helpful. Because I think if I remember correctly, he says that Lucia's words don't necessarily point in that direction, right? That she was saying that it has been real. I don't know. I mean, when you step back and look at all the events, and you step back and look at Fatima itself, you can't help but think that there was something else. That she came to give us some sort of warning, and not just exhortation to pray and fast and so on and so forth. I don't know. I think I might lean the other way, but I'm not convinced either way.
The kicker for me was what Sochi points out about in Lucia's fourth memoir. She talks about the sense impression ability as it varied between each of the three seers. Francisco could only so Lucia could speak, see, and hear. Jacinta could only speak and hear, and Francisco could literally only speak. He could neither see nor hear the Virgin. And she asked the Virgin Mary, would it be okay, because Francisco's in trouble right now? He might have had a venial sin on his soul or something, maybe mortal. Is it okay if I tell him, because he's not hearing you, the words of you, the Virgin, for the third secret? And Our Lady said yes. And of course, there are no words that were ever released by the Vatican. So to me, that's as good as it gets. That there's some covered thing. Right? Remember that, Taylor?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think if people want to get down and dirty in it, I think watch the videos Tim and I did on it. We did a 3-part series, and then we did an initial kind of like a pre-video. I think we did a 5th one somewhere. But Dave, have you seen Schneider's new book, Christus Vincit?
I have not had a chance to read anything lately except for research.
Just got to show
for
everybody my signed version.
Sweet,
nice.
But he has a whole chapter on third secret in here. And I just want to share. I want everybody to buy the book, because this book is really good, Schneider's new book. But he has a whole chapter, and I'm just going to read an appropriate part, because he may have shifted since you talked to him, Dave. When did you talk to him?
This is 3 years ago.
Okay.
So maybe 3.5 years ago.
So he says, but there may be a reason that explains the misunderstanding. Sister Lucia's biography contains an expression which says that Our Lady told her that she had to write down the text of the secret, but not what she explained to her about the secret. These are two different things.
Right.
The text itself was revealed completely, but there could still be some explanations Our Lady gave to her that have not been revealed? I don't know. So that right there, it comes pretty close to a 3B, that there may be things written that explain it, but has not been revealed. Anyway, I mean, he goes into depth a lot about it and what Sister Lucy, he even says earlier, he says, this is pretty interesting. However, I cannot imagine that a person with such high moral standard as Cardinal Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, in the presence of a pope would deceive the entire world. So he talks about, you know, what a big deal this is, that you would kind of have some sort of mental reservation. But even Ratzinger himself, and Tim and I talked about this, he relates it to Akita. And Akita definitely talks about an inner quarrel within the church. So
allegedly, he said that the messages of Fatima and Akita are one and the same, according to, I think, Bishop Ito, or Harold D., the ambassador, said that Ratzinger said that.
Sure, but these things, you know, the messages of Lords and Fatima, there is a continuity there, and that's Our Lady saying penance, penance, penance. So read broadly, it could be that, you know, penance in atonement for the sins of the world to avoid some of these chastisements. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I've told Tim this privately before, and this does bother me. I actually got a book, it was written maybe in the maybe even 80s about Fatima, and I had it since I was like in high school. And it talks about the secret being written down, and it says that and this is before some of the later events that transpired, where the Vatican now has the document like on their website. You know, there's the link to the document. You can go read the text of the third secret. It does say that it's on 4 papers in that book before there's any controversy about this. And now, obviously, if you go to the Vatican website, the secret is on 1 paper. Yeah. So that, you know, that gives me pause. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Why should that give you pause? That's totally normal.
Well, and that's something people said later, you know, that people might, that just the average Joe Schmo on the street might be like, well, I'm going to write you off because this sounds like conspiracy theory,
it
right?
It meant that it was folded in 4, and then when you unravel it, it's really 1.
It was a napkin, right? No, so some people might be tempted to be like, oh, these are just, you know, conspiracy theorists talking. But like I said, I have a book from before there's any controversy that says it's on 4 separate pages. And, you know, they have no reason at that point. There's no incentive.
Yeah, and the other thing, Tim, I think you brought this up in our videos, was Pius XII ordered Father Schweigel to go and interview Lucia. This was in 1952.
Right. 52.
Okay, so this is early on. And he says, I'm going to read the quote. This is in Infiltration. I quote this. I cannot reveal anything of what I learned at Fatima concerning the third secret, but I can say that it has 2 parts. One concerns the Pope. The other, logically, although I must say nothing, would have to be the continuation of the words, in Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc.
Right.
So in 1952, before John the 23rd opened it, he says it's 2 parts. One about the Pope. Obviously, the thing we read from 2000 is about the Pope. But then we've never read anything that has, you know, something to do with Portugal.
Also key to that Schweigel interview is that he says, and I must say nothing about this part, meaning
right. So
there's something super secret needed to be revealed in 1960 where there would be a context for it. You can't say anything until 1960. He's even saying that 8 years prior.
Right.
But if these kids could be silenced like this so well, this is another question that's always, you know, I've been kicking around my mind for a long time. If these kids could be silenced by the powers that be, why would Our Lady have deigned to make them the visionaries? Why wouldn't she go to somebody else that's going to be, even in the face of, you know, ecclesiastical persecution, going to strongly speak out?
I've got a good hypothesis on that, and that is this. Now, this is controversial. People might get mad and turn off this video. But Our Lady wanted this third secret revealed in 1960. and I chased down all the quotes, and it was not before 1960. It was in 1960. John the 23rd opened it at Castle Gandolfo in 1959. It's documented. I think that the reason Our Lady chose these children, the reason Our Lady said 1960 and had all these things made public by Lucia, was so that we, the laity, we, the church, would know that there is papal disobedience.
It's interesting.
It's so that we, the laity, know that there's papal disobedience.
That's actually clever. Yeah, it's
a sign. Because the whole world, the New York Times published, that's going to open the secret and all that. And open the secret and nothing. Even Protestants wanted to know about this. This was a big deal. This was a really big deal.
New York Times,
probably
LA
the biggest message anticipated in the 1900s, and they just closed the book on it and were completely silent. I will not say one word. 1959 version.
What about Sister Lucia's subsequent statements that she just, she was going on a hunch, and the 1960 date didn't come from the Blessed Virgin Mary, and it came from her, and she had a hunch, and it was you ought to, but you don't have to release this by 1960. She just thought that it would be better understood at that point, because that's always what I've heard floated for this, Taylor.
I cover that in Infiltration. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull it up. I don't have the book in front of me, so
I have it here.
You got it? You have that page?
I don't have the page. Sorry.
Okay, so the bishop, here it is. The bishop in 1943 asked her to reveal the third secret, which she hesitated to do because of its shocking contents. In October 1943, the bishop ordered her, under obedience, to put the third secret into writing. On January 2nd, 1944, Our Lady of Fatima appeared to Lucia and gave her permission to write down the third secret, but to have it sealed until 1960, quote, and this is quoting Our Lady, "It will be clearer then." Lucia then wrote down and sealed an envelope to be opened in 1960 when it will become clearer. The sealed envelope containing the third secret of Fatima would later be transferred to Rome in 1955 and wait to be opened. So presumably this is the reason why Pius XII never opened it, because Our Lady said it should be opened in 1960. And this was an apparition of Our Lady of Fatima to Lucia, not in 1917, but 1944, a later apparition.
Yeah.
So I think the 1960 date comes from Our Lady. I've never seen a quote that says that was her hunch.
It was one of those later like interviews with her where
she said
that quote's attributed to her. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's a really key piece of information. And a lot of this, there tends to be some equivocation and just like different conflicting almost statements by the seer are attributed to her out here, which is why this whole thing remains so veiled, and it's so fascinating. And I'd love to get
stuff that's controverted that comes later. It doesn't come directly from Lucia. It comes from Lucia through either Cardinal Sodano or Cardinal Bertoni, both of whom are dirty and were proven to be liars. I mean, Vigano called them liars on completely different scores later, and Sochi rather convincingly shows that their will is bad in the fourth secret of Fatima. Sochi really nicely avoids any kind of ugly tinfoil hat type conjecture regarding JP2 or Benedict XVI. He's really telling a story, a meta narrative, which has them coming out okay. It's really Sodano and Bertone that rather convincingly come out bad, and that's where you get the account given, especially by Bertone, of Sister Lucy saying all this wacky stuff later. Yeah.
Wait, going with Taylor's kind of narrative, the hypothesis that perhaps Our Lady did reveal these things to these kids so it would come out that the Vatican and even maybe the popes are not being faithful and doing as Our Lady has asked, then I guess what's the point in the secrets having this kind of pressing content, this time-sensitive content? It seems like she could have tested or demonstrated the unfaithfulness of Rome in or some of the stewards of, the chair of Peter in Rome. She could have done it in another way. Do you have anything for that, Dr. Marshall?
Yeah, I mean, of course she could do it a different way. I think it's, especially if we relate it back to what happened at the French Revolution with the Sacred Heart and the king and all that. I think Our Lady is a mother, and so there is a contingency in this. I mean, you could have had a pope who opened it and announced it in 1960, and maybe there would have been a Second Vatican Council that would have had some anathemas in it and would have really cleaned up the church and provided some good discipline and a reaffirmation of the Catholic faith in the 1960s when we needed it the most, when the culture really, really went after us. And of course, you guys are covering all that, with sexual revolution and feminism and all that. That's a contingency I'm sure that she would have hoped for, but I think it also allows for the contingency of disobedience, of secularism in the church, of the attack on the liturgy, the attack on theology, and then just the complete corruption of the hierarchy, especially in Rome, the cardinals, and then like what you see with Bertoni and Sedano and Maciel and all these, and McCarrick, all these disgusting things that happen. Contingency is always part of prophecy, and I think she, as a mother, allows. So she's working, and serving her son. I think she allows for that. So, here we are in 2019, and we're looking back, and I don't think whether you're, hardcore sedevacantist, or you attend the Latin Mass, you go to Novus Ordo, or you totally agree with Austin Ivory and everything, no one can say that demographically the Catholic Church globally has been in a increase mode or prospering theologically since 1960.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Taylor, I'd like to move it along.
Sure.
Let's go to June when we were still doing the TNT videos. What Archbishop Vigano released, I think, 5th epistle then by my count. It got unclear what counted as one of his missives and what was just him ducking his head above water for a breath.
Right.
But he rather specifically endorsed a lot of the positions in infiltration. How are people skipping over this?
Yeah, I think Vigano, he had that interview in Inside the Vatican, and he kind of had a casual remark like, well, these kind of things are explained in Marshall's book Infiltration, and then people started screen capturing that and sending it to me. I was actually at a pro-life golf tournament that day, and my phone just started blowing up, and they're like, Vigano mentioned infiltration. And yeah, I think it's, to me, the most heroic guys on earth right now are these older bishops who are seasoned, like Bishop Schneider. And again, I can't recommend this book enough, Christus Vincit, and Vigano. These are the guys who are saying things that are difficult and will exile any bishop on earth. They will get in serious trouble. I mean, Schneider's in Kazakhstan and Vigano's in hiding. That should tell you something. And I love the fact that Schneider wrote the foreword of the book, and Vigano has said, not a blurb, but has at least said, hey, check out this book because it has the skinny on these things. I'm surprised that even Trent Horn or anyone like that in 2019 would thumb their nose at this and say, look, this is all bogus. And my response is okay, if it's conspiracy theory, what is the false conspiracy theory what's the false thesis? Tell me, because no one will tell me. And then secondly, what is your account for how we got here in 2019? How do you explain Francis? How do you explain apparent changes in faith and morals? How do you explain McCarrick? How do you explain, Tim, you've seen this stuff with Zanchetta the last few days. Remember the video we did on Zanchetta?
We covered
Zanchetta. Is it Zanchetta or Chetta?
Zanchetta, yeah, because he's Italian. Yeah,
part of the TNT tradition, just mispronouncing prelate's names. Zanchetta,
he's fast time.
Yeah, exactly. It's how we roll. I mean, how do you account for this?
I don't know.
His phone was hacked.
That's how they.
It's just a hacker on his phone.
Yeah. I mean,
No, I mean they skip around it. It's shadow banning something. You literally, because I was wondering this, in the 2019 era. I turned on Catholic Answers even before I went on and debated Trent on death penalty and feminism, and I wanted to check out, how are you guys, Jimmy Akin, Tim Staples, Trent Horn, smart men all. How are you guys tripping over yourselves to walk between the raindrops and not mention the crisis? The fact it's beyond whistling past the graveyard, and they just don't mention it. That's how they. I mean, it's not like they talk about, okay, Zenchetta, vegano, Pachamama. I mean, I guess they did commit to a point of view that Pachamama wasn't Pachamama. Pachamama was the Virgin Mary or something, but usually they just don't cover it.
Yeah. And how can you be something called Catholic Answers when you don't answer the elephant in the room?
About Catholic things. Right.
About
their name should just be a blank, because it's as of late not been super Catholic, and there aren't very many answers. They should just be
yes. I know it's been to watch it's been a meltdown, because you had your two debates with Trent Horn, which were devastating, and then you had Jimmy Akin, as you mentioned, say that this was not Pachamama, and then literally the Pope in Rome calls it Pachamama just right after that.
The next day.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then just to see the Catholic Answers staff ratioed on Twitter this past week for going at, because they're going after the people who are trying to give an account. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Marshall's infiltration book is wrong. Maybe Gordon's wrong on all this stuff. What is your account? I don't see anyone from Word on Fire, Catholic Answers Live, Papal Posse, yes, but EWTN, the main outlets, I don't see anyone offering a narrative to explain the facts, that every single layperson is reeling in the pews trying to figure out what happened to our beloved Catholic Church. Financial scandals, sexual scandals, here in America, in Rome, in Argentina, in Chile, name a country. It's a serious crisis.
I just want to interject, for our viewers, and just say, in no way are we being petty here either by kind of going after, Catholic Answers and Trent Horn in this show. We've continually tried to make the peace in this kind of, I don't want to call it a feud, but this rift that's opened up. And they just keep picking the scab. There are small things. I didn't like the way they were dealing with you, Taylor, the other day, and the snarkiness of the remarks. And I certainly don't like some of what's transpired since Tim's debates and on Twitter. But we have made an effort to make the peace. And right now, everything we're saying, it's not because we're being petty or small-souled. It's that this stuff needs to be said because they're an apostolate. They have Catholic in their name, and they're responsible for disseminating information and being almost a news source with commentary. And when they're falling and failing in that, they're letting down the faithful, because they're depriving us of our opportunity to take to the magisterium our concerns, which we have a canonical right and duty to do as members of the faithful.
Chris, isn't it true? I completely agree with all that. Day. But Chris, isn't it true that what Taylor's saying, this is sort of defense attorney's rule number one. If you're going to refute a narrative that Marshall's putting out there, or LifeSite News is putting out there, or 1 Peter 5 is putting out there, isn't it incumbent on you to at least offer a things are fine, my hair is not on fire meta-narrative for how, why is this crisis happening in the church? I mean, I don't think they're doing an adequate job of this, to say the least.
Yeah, I think that I think one of the reasons why Taylor's book is so popular is because I don't know if this would be the first time, but for the first time, at least in a while, it seems like someone has dared to do something that many postmoderns don't want to do, which is try to come up with a big narrative and try to say, hey, let's not force a narrative onto the events, but let's see if we can draw something together through these events. And I think that Taylor's doing it, so he's getting slammed for it. And I don't see a lot there. I mean, there's a few other people that are doing it that I think have gone off the rails, but I will mention their names here. But I don't think anybody else is doing that. And so the problem is, the reason why you have so many faithful Catholics that are liking Taylor's stuff, that don't like that Catholic Answers is not talking about or whatever, is because people right now are looking for a story to make sense out of all the events. By the way, Paul was doing this in Romans. He was doing this in Galatia when he wrote his letter to Galatia. He's trying to draw forth, people are suffering in the early church, and Paul's saying, here's the story that fits these events. We're going through a new Exodus where the new Moses has given a new law, and the reason why you're being persecuted is because there's this Exodus thing that had happened through Christ's death and resurrection. And so if you're suffering, think of Romans 8 here, if you're suffering, it's because the dark powers, their time's running out, and a new Lord has been crowned king. And so Paul's doing this, right? Paul's saying, hey, let me draw pieces from the Old Testament and the New Testament, and let me draw this big, long narrative as to why things are happening right now, why these certain events are happening. And people want that today. People want to know, okay, are we in exile right now? If we're in exile, can someone give an account of that? If we're going through Babylon in 586, can someone explain that? And this is what the prophets were trying to do. The prophets trying to say, this is the story that comes from these events. So I think that we do need books like Taylor's, which are trying to put forth this narrative, saying, okay, here are a series of events that explain why the church is in this situation. I think also too, I don't think it can happen in a popular book, but Taylor could do a more technical book of the theological controversies. I mean, because at the popular level, the Catholics sitting in the pews don't have time to get into all the theological controversies. I was just reading Tracy Rowland's book on Catholic theology, and I was like, oh my gosh, my head is spinning. You have the Concilium, you have the Communio, you have all these different theologians within that. And then you have all the neo-scholastics and everything they're doing leading up to the council. And then you just have, it's just theological chaos. But nobody's going to want to read that book, right, Taylor? It's like, nobody's like, this is too detailed. So it's you have to be somewhat of an artist to draw that out, but at the same time trying to stick with the facts and the events that are actually happening. And
Chris, yeah, but the church, there's a difference here, and there's a distinction. And I mentioned it on the show the other day to you. What's bothersome, I think, to the faithful is that the church is supposed to be the fulfillment of the promises to David, right? It's supposed to be the new Davidic kingdom. And one of the promises about the church is that it's going to be an everlasting kingdom, right? So Christ, when he's crowned with the crown of thorns and he's enthroned on the cross, that's how the patristics saw it, was him being enthroned on the cross. It's not supposed to be subject to a coup d'etat. And so what's bothersome when you see the church in such a state, a state of disarray in a way, is that it's like, well, Christ said that the gates of hell aren't going to prevail against the church, and this is supposed to be the fulfillment of the Davidic promises. So what do we make of that?
Yeah, but that's like saying to Jesus. Remember in Matthew chapter 16 verse 19, Jesus says, "You are Peter, and on this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. I give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven." Yada yada yada. That's chapter 16 verse 19, and then literally in verse 20, 21, and 22, Peter betrays Jesus, and then he turns to Peter and he's like, "You're Satan." He's like, "Get behind me, Satan." But you can't interrupt Jesus and be like, "Jesus, sorry. You actually made this promise in verse 19. And so actually Peter can't be Satan." Come on. Jesus knows the battle lines have been drawn. This is war. And you're going to have casualties. Yes, Jesus Christ is king. Actually, Paul would say the very fact that Christ has been crowned king means the war has really just begun. It's not like the victory's over. That's why the church is a military trying to make him king on earth as in heaven. This is what Our Father's all about. But you're going to have casualties. You're going to have popes that fall. You're going to have a lot of lay people. You're going to have schools, institutions. You're going to have people that are caught in the crossfire. And
so the question is then, amid all this, because we're all faithful sons of the church, all four of us. social kingship of Christ. Chris, this is your big thing, but so to cut it to the chase, where does infiltration, which I endorse most or all of these ideas in this book, where does infiltration fit in with social kingship of Christ, no coup d'etat, the kinds of things Dave's talking about, unless it's end times? I mean, Taylor, this is always the thing I struggle with. Unless this is end times, I don't have a context for it.
Yeah, I think it fits in with what Christopher and Dave were just saying, and that is the Catholic Church is the kingdom without end. It's the Davidic kingdom. It's the kingdom that's prophesied in Daniel chapter 2, where the pagan kingdoms are handed over to the Son of Man. But it's still, remember, our king is crowned. But when we go to Mass, the crown on his head is the crown of thorns. That's what we still see over the altar, right? Is the crown of thorns. And there's always a thorn. There's always a betrayal. I mean, you go back before we humans were made, there was a betrayal, an infiltration in heaven where you had Lucifer fall. It happened with Adam and Eve. It happens with their sons. One kills the other.
Right.
And then it just works all the way through the patriarchs. They're all betraying each other. Joseph thrown in the pit. I mean, it is a constant betrayal, every single story in the Bible. And you look at David's life, he's constantly being betrayed. He's betrayed by his own son, Absalom. So the Davidic kingdom is always one of betrayal. And it's just amazing that you see in the moment of redemption, the whole thing is set up by a betrayal, that of Judas Iscariot. Yeah. And even when you get to great moments in church history, you know, like social reign of Christ the King, you get to Charlemagne, you know, and those eras. Well, then in the 900s, you get to the pornography of like the worst popes of all time. And even the Holy Roman Empire, which is this, in a sense, this great reign of the social reign of Christ the King. We have a Holy Roman Empire. You have emperors crowned literally by a pope.
Yep.
Well, what happens when you get in the later Middle Ages? All these guys, you got the investiture controversy, you got them marching against Rome, you got them fighting the Pope. Yeah, betraying their father, the Pope. So there is always the betrayal, and this thing is always going on. And I mean, my read of Catholic prophecy and the apocalypse and all that is we will eventually get to a even more fulfilled, even more robust social reign of Christ the King on earth. And from that will give way to the Antichrist and the final tribulation. So I don't think
even Charlemagne himself, it's interesting, had to sort of be corrected post-mortem by, I think it was Pope Nicholas I, was saying Charlemagne was getting too officious. He wanted to help the church, but he's dithering in our affairs far too much. So it's a great point.
Yeah. I mean, and Constantine was great for the church. Think of all that happened, the Nicene Council, the Nicene Creed, the original version, all these things. And then it's just a reign of Arianism for the next, 60 years. So we can never be, our eschatology is real. It's already not yet. The church triumphant has it. We are in the battle. We're in the militant. There are moments when we capture hills and we move forward, and there are moments when we take major casualties. I believe 2019 is a major casualty moment, but I still believe that we're moving towards something very good. I'm very hopeful. I'm always smiling. I'm not depressed. I think we are moving to something really good. I don't think we're going to get out of this controversy. Whether this is the final hill that we go over or not, I don't think until probably 2050, 2060, we're going to see anything unwind yet. I mean, we only have, count them on two hands, bishops or cardinals that are public right now talking about this. That's how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we even have Cardinal Burke saying that this amount of confusion in the church could be a signal of the end times, and we're not sensationalists on the show, and neither are you, Taylor. What I'm trying to say is it the end of the world, and when's that going to happen? No.
Give me the exact date.
Yeah, the exact date and time.
Buy our new book with the exact date and time. Yeah.
Well, because we know, and again, the doctors and of the church and the patristics were quite unanimous that things would have to get quite bad for the second coming, for the parousia to take place, right? And it's going to happen at such a time when the powers of darkness have, and the man of sin has such a stranglehold on the world, and that only Christ coming and shortening this period of tribulation could see it that any of the faithful made it through unscathed. And it's going to manifest God's great glory and his mercy and his power that he comes when he comes to deliver the church, his beautiful and unblemished bride of this period of suffering. Any thoughts on that?
I don't think we're in the end times. I could be wrong. I don't think it's it. I think we have a long way to go. I'm a big believer in the reign of Mary. I think there's a lot of prophecies that Our Lady says, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. And I think we will, just as we saw the French Revolution, that thing happened so fast, right? And then in a way it was over, but the poison was still baked into the cake. I mean, Europe still has that problem. But I think we will see, I think what we're seeing right now is going to escalate and get faster and faster and faster. And I think it's going to explode. And again, it might take a few decades, but it's going to burn up pretty quick. And then I really do believe that we somehow related to the year 1917, that is going to bring about some kind of eschatological social reign of Christ the King. I think we'll see something that is, even better than what we saw under Constantine, even better than what we saw under Charlemagne. That we truly will see the political order, not perfectly, because we all have concupiscence, but I do think we can see somehow a triumph of Christianity before it all goes down. And I could be totally wrong on that. That's my take on it.
Let's Taylor, let's talk John Paul I, because I want to go to a show you and I did, and now I want to give you credit, man. I said I hedged my bets a little bit, and I said on the Godfather 3 theory, as we were calling it.
Yep.
I was saying I'm 30 to 40% in, and you said something. I forget what you said. I don't want to quote you, but you were like 95%, and then baked in to the middle. It was almost the exact mid date of the Pachamama Synod, as I like to call it, the Amazon Synod. I think it's October the 19th. Right in the middle of the thing, beginning of the last week, there's this mobster covered by New York Post, a secular paper. His name is Anthony Raimondi. He claimed that he was part of an assassination squad for JP1, and the thing was buried. It was buried, and I just said, I think I texted you. Chris texted me, and he's like, look at this. And then I think I just copied him saying, look at this to me, and texted it to you, and I said, good job, bro. And you also went on you talk about it a little bit in your book. So you tied yourself to that, and another one you got right, or at least you're at least being vindicated.
Nobody covered it, and I thought I was like, okay, I must be totally missing something. I'm so stupid.
No one covered it. It was weird. I mean,
yeah. So yeah, I
possibly
remember that, Tim. I think the first time you and I talked about Godfather 3 theory, which is that John Paul I was murdered, that he was poisoned. I think the first time I was like, I think he's 51%. I think that's what I first said. And then later on I said 80. And then after I wrote Infiltration, I said I'm 95% sure he was murdered.
That's right.
So I progressed as I did the research, and my chapter in Infiltration explains why. And I admit some people say, oh, there's conjecture. I admit in Infiltration, some things are facts and some things are conjecture. This is one of the ones that's conjecture. But I think there's a pretty strong case, and I haven't completely looked into what this mob guy's saying, but the things he is saying about Vilo and about other people who are in Calvi and other people. Roberto Calvi is called God's banker. You got Marcinkus, you got Sindona, all these guys. I mean, everyone, what I found when I was researching it, everyone involved in it, by the time you get to 1980, they're either dead or murdered.
Right.
I mean, Sindona was back and forth by the FBI and the Italian authorities. And finally, he died of cyanide poisoning in prison in his coffee. They got to him in prison and poisoned him.
It just got in there. Someone dropped cyanide accidentally in prison in his coffee.
Yeah. So
explain?
Everyone's getting knocked off.
Yeah. Marcinkus, all the Marcinkus crew. Yeah.
And for the audience, why? What's the motive? What's the benefit for these shadow figures in knocking off, high-ranking prelates and even possibly a pope?
So this all goes back to Paul VI. Paul VI was from Milan. When he was in Milan, he became really good friends with the Milanese banking community. And when he became pope, there were all of these debts, and there's also a problem with the Italian state because of taxation. And the Vatican was going to take a huge hit on their taxes because of the change in the law in Italy. So Paul VI hired in his old buddy from Milan to come in and help them out. And unfortunately, and this is all documented in the book, he starts tying up all this money with Sicilian bank accounts, which were also traced to basically the global heroin trade. And it gets all wrapped up in American banks, in Milan, in Italian banks, in Sicily. And you can't, like Marcinkus says, look, you can't run a church on Hail Marys. You need money, right? This is what Marcinkus told. I think he told it to John Paul II, because oddly enough, John Paul II ended up hiring him and bringing him in to run the finances as well after all this was over. So it's basically you have a major, and this is in Godfather 3. If you watch Godfather 3, they tap into this whole story. I think what do they call it? Tim, what's the name of the operation that they're running? It's on the tip of my tongue.
I forget it.
Oh, I forget it too. I forget. They have a different name. It's actually based, kind of related to the name in history. But, and then right when John Paul I comes in, you have this list of people who are Masonic bankers that's going to be released. And when that's released in that time period, which is in the 33-day period of John Paul I's pontificate, happens then. The story is John Paul I got the list, was going to have to address it, and then he dies. And then you have Cardinal Villot come in to the scene of the death and removes all kinds of things from the papal apartment.
Right, and the Vatican had legitimately changed the rules on papal autopsies within a week or something. It's all pretty openly
the embalming,
fishy
the embalming is pretty sketchy. There's a lot of odd things that happen within it. Again, this is conjecture. This is not a slam dunk, but there's enough oddities in it. And you look at the problem and how much money the Vatican lost in this deal with the Milanese. It comes out to be in modern money, they lost in just one of these $53 million in 1974 dollars.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, and it's all begins in the late 60s, and it climaxes really in like 76, 77, 78, 79.
What of the alleged list of high-ranking prelates who were either Freemasons or had strong Freemasonic ties that JP1, not a theological conservative, JP1 was allegedly going to out or publish?
Yeah, there was this list called, I think it's called Pecorelli's list that came out.
Yep.
Yeah, it came out on September 12th, 1978. And it listed Cardinal Villot, it listed Cardinal Casaroli, it listed Cardinal Poletti, it listed Cardinal Swinens, it listed Archbishop Bugnini, the guy who's responsible for the Novus Ordo, and it listed Archbishop Marcinkus, who was the president of the Vatican Bank, the president of it. That list came out on September 12th, 1978. 14 days later, September 28th, 1978, John Paul I was found dead.
Yeah.
And John Paul I was Pope for 33 days, folks. So 2 weeks after that list came out, John Paul I was dead. John Paul I was not listed on that list as a Freemason, by the way. But all the people in charge of the Vatican finances were on that list. So that's the conjecture. That's the hypothesis, is that the Vatican Bank was being run by people connected to Italian Freemasonry, the P2, and that they couldn't. Paul VI was willing to play the games with them, and providing cover for them, and even bringing in the Milanese bankers. But perhaps John Paul I was not going to be willing to play games.
Yeah. Taylor, with that said, you mentioned the Italian Freemasons, and I was hoping you could, for us, kind of break down some of the connections between some of these, I'd say, like, periphery groups that have Masonic roots, and kind of bring us to that nucleus of Freemasonry. So I guess that would be with, like, the Carbonari or the Rosicrucians or the P2.
Right.
What is the link? How can you tell, aside from obviously looking at somebody's charter or something, who is Freemasonry involved, or kind of an offshoot, like a spin-off? I think that's important, especially in light, and obviously your book goes into detail on the Alta Vendita. Since that was a Carbonari document, we need that connection between the Carbonari and the Freemasons to call it Masonic. Can you draw that connection for us, please?
Yes. Before I do, though, I like to not use the word Masonic, because that refers to just one portion, as you just referenced. I like to use the term secret societies. We find that we see Freemasonry in papal documents, but secret societies that promote secular humanism. So they're going to promote the universal distribution of goods. They're going to promote feminism. They're going to promote a naturalistic religion, that is, a religion stripped of everything supernatural. So the crossing of the Red Sea was just an earthquake that made the water move. When Christ multiplied the loaves and the fishes, this is just people sharing.
Right.
When Christ rose again, he really just rose again in our hearts because of his teachings. That's all naturalism. So Freemasonry is this, or secret societies, groups saying these things, which in the 1500s, 1600s, even the 1700s, saying these things in public would get you fired or maybe killed. You can't say these kind of things, even in Protestant lands. In a lot of places, you couldn't say this. So these people were very intelligent. They're meeting in secret. That's why they're called secret societies. And they're discussing, how do we change the old order of Europe, which was based on Catholic principles, subsidiarity. I mean, you look at a map of medieval Europe and all the different nations. It's subsidiary. There's time. Even the Holy Roman Empire is broken up. If you look at a map of it, and all these little duchies,
Mm-hmm.
It's really remarkable how medieval Europe operated. They want to basically have a Christendom without Christ. And so what you see is let's take human nature and let's exalt it to make it divine. It's really the lie of Satan. Satan wanted to dethrone God and make himself, even though he didn't have omnipotence, make himself like unto a god. The name Michael, Mikael, means who is like God. That's what Michael said to Lucifer. So any of these secret groups who are promoting the lie that human nature can exalt itself, determine itself, man is the measure of all things, and enthrone himself as God, that's the problem. So we could call that Masonry or Freemasonry. It's the lie. And this is why Freemasons and Rosicrucians, all of them love the analogy of alchemy. You take base metals like lead, and somehow through some magical rite, you turn it into gold. And that's an analogy for human nature. Human nature is weak. We make rational mistakes. Physically, we all get sick and die. Somehow we take the lead of human nature and we exalt it to become gold. We make it divine. And so you see in the Rosicrucian rites, the Freemasonic rites, is all of this alchemy, Egyptian dark arts, to turn something low to divine.
Yeah, and Propaganda Due is actually under the Grand Orient of Italy. It's got its Masonic papers. So a lot of these are subsets of the Grand Orient of Italy. I'm not sure about the Carbonari, but the way that of course, being by virtue of being secret societies, we don't know their org charts, right? We don't know much about them. So some of them are brother organizations, like for instance, Leo the 13th said you can't, Catholic faithful men cannot practice or attend at the Lions Club, but they can do Kiwanis Club, so the Lions Club is in some way a fraternal organization with the Masons, and they're, it's like vertical federalism versus horizontal federalism. Whereas others are actually organized, their charter is under the Grand Orient of whatever, Scotland or Italy, the Scottish Rite, the Italian Rite. P2, Propaganda Due, is actually it's like all of the banker corrupt guys come from P2, and they're actually Masons. I don't know. I've never been able to ascertain it clearly about the Carbonari, whether or not they're horizontal or vertical in pair with the Masons. But the point is, they're like Taylor said, all of the popes, non-tinfoil hat wearing readers of the popes from the late 1800s, they were just calling them the secret societies of secular humanism.
Right.
And it's all basically the same stuff. You can be a Kiwanis club, but you can't be a Lions club. And yeah, I mean, they were all working at the same goal.
But if they're, and this is what I guess I'm driving at in making this connection, and maybe, Taylor, you're saying that maybe making this connection is not that important. But if there were parallel evolution, and one secret society isn't necessarily the product of another, and they're maybe not united in mind and united in goals going forward. What would you say to an objection like that? Like there's parallel evolution, and therefore they have a bunch of disparate goals, whereas we tend to treat, these secret societies more as a monolith.
I would agree with the objection. I would grant the objection. That's one reason why I said at the beginning, I don't like using the term Freemasonry, because it assumes that they're all the same. I like secret societies, that's the papal, and these different secret societies do have different goals, but they generally have the same religious and philosophical outlook, which is secular. So, for example, the Carbonari, their touch point is they want to not just overturn monarchy, they want to overturn the monarchy of the papal states and dissolve the papal states. That's one of the high points of the Carbonari secret society. That's what they're going for. Now, someone who's a Scottish Rite Freemason doesn't have that in his mission statement. He may donate some money or help out, but that's not what he's worried about. He's more worried about the English crown, right? Or maybe the Anglo-American, the American experiment, right? So Ben Franklin is not going to be too concerned about, what the Carbonari were going to try to achieve. So they're all working the same way. It's just, and there is no flow chart, and they don't all have this. It's not like you can take the Rosicrucians and then have a genetic chart where they all come from that. And some people have said, well, is Pope Francis a Freemason? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a member or if your name's on a card. What matters is, do you believe in the principles of the secret societies? Do you want a secular society? Do you want secular political organizations? Do you want all religions to be equal?
Yeah,
right?
And even the Masons or secret society members that were involved in the American experiment, the ones like Franklin that were actually confirmed Masons, far fewer than people assume. They did have one. I'd push back a little bit the other way. They did all have one uniting theme, and it was the propagation of the French Revolution, the ideas of the French Revolution. So Franklin, people thought Jefferson, there's no confirmation there, but they were all the Francophiles wanting the healthy aspects of the American Revolution to become Frenchified. And when we talk about the French Revolution, there's an important evolution. This is pointed out to me by a very important, well-respected professor. I think we're all friends with him. 800-page book by Beruel, a monk. The infiltration between 1717, which was the uniting of the four lodges in London at the Goose and Gridiron Grill, sometime between 1717 and the French Revolution, 8 decades later, you had important infiltration of the Jacobinist lodges by a certain kind of French Mason that were pushing these ideas and saying, hey, you should really incorporate these Masonic ideas into what will be known in a fearsome new day, a couple generations down the road as Jacobinism. It was just Jacobinism was an older concept, and it was being radicalized and Masonicized during those decades in the run up to the late 1700s. And after that, like Taylor pointed out, even though the Masons that were involved in the minority that were involved in the American experiment, the mark of their true Masonness was them trying to Frenchify the American Revolution, and that never took, luckily.
Yeah, it depends on the context. I mean, you look at the Freemasons in a place like Austria, which is deeply Catholic and has a Holy Roman Emperor or an emperor. What are they trying to do there? They're trying to do marriage reform and allow for no-fault divorce. That's the Freemason agenda. So I think it depends on, and you look at the Freemasons, for example, in Brazil and in South America, they're doing a little bit more of a communist push. So I think it just depends on the message, but their goals are all the same. They're all working for secular governments, what we know as socialism. They're definitely all pushing for marriage reform and women out of the house, divorce, the end of patriarchy, all of these things. It's just a leveling out of human society where there is no pope, there is no king, there is no leader, there is no father, there is no husband. We're all individuals. I hate that word individuals. It's not a Catholic word. Individual is a Protestant socialist term. You would never say there are 3 individuals in the Holy Trinity. There's 3 persons, and we're persons. We're all engaging in a society. Individuals is what communists say because they're like, well, what's the basis of society? The nation? Nope, you can divide the nation. Okay, how about the local states and towns? Nope, you can divide those. Okay, how about the family? No, you can divide the family. All right, well, how about the husband and wife? Nope, you can divide the family and the husband and wife by divorce. The only thing you can't really divide is each one of these persons. It's a very molecular, atomistic understanding of human nature. That's why I always try not to say individual. Occasionally I hear Catholics I really respect say it. I'm like, say person. We've always, the Latin way of saying it is person, persona. They're all
personae.
Yes, they're all trying to individuate society. That is secularism. That's what you guys are going after in your feminist talks and in the book, is this idea. Communism goes after the nation, but then feminism goes after the family unit.
It's the great evil of democracy now by too many people on our side of things, traditional minded people in the church are blaming it on, following, Patrick, Dr. Patrick Deneen, blaming it on liberalism. It's not true. Liberalism is just, do you believe in liberty? They're blaming the great individualizing of society, social emphasis on liberalism. It really is the fault of democracy, a corrupted form of the regime. And there's a million directions we can take that. Taylor, in closing here, it's been great to have you on. Obviously, good to see you, the bearded Marshall. Want to tell us, where's this going? Because you've talked to some different people from me over the last month and a half. Where's this going in early 2020? Where's the pontificate going? Where's the infiltration going? And we'll have you close us out that way.
So the agenda from Rome and on down will be to try to silence people like us using the S word, schismatic. Schismatic will be, you will start to hear this more and more in the next year. When it comes to America, they really don't like America. They're waiting for Ratzinger to die. and then they're going to scapegoat him. They're going to say, look, Maciel, McCarrick, all this bad stuff was under Ratzinger and JP2, and Francis is the great reformer. And the reason the Americans are all so upset is because they're schismatics, and they need to get in line with the great reform, which is Francis. So I think that's the way they're going to take it. I don't think it's going to work. You're seeing a great awakening, even in places like Italy. And I think just now in 2018 was the woke moment for the United States. I think 2020 could be the woke moment for Europe. I think seeing things like Alexander Chugawel and the things that are now going, and the people that I'm talking to that are in England, France, Italy, the Germanic nations, they're starting to wake up and realize just how corrupt the European cardinals are and how corrupt that whole system is. So my projection for the next year will be Europe will become more and more of a ground zero. And I think Americans like us will continue to make a dust up. But I think that's how it's going to go. And their strategy is going to be to call us schismatics, and it's not going to work.
Nice. Sounds good. Sounds like a good year. Can we just go straight to 2021? That sounds good to me.
Yeah, maybe 21 and 22 will be more and more global. But I mean, we definitely, I think all four of us agree, 2018 and early 19 was a woke moment for America. The McCarrick thing hit everybody in the forehead.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it's funny that who was it? Spadaro. Spadaro, the Pope's mouthpiece. It was in 2017 that he postulated this ecumenism of hatred between all Americans who call themselves right wing. They hate the secular humanist ideas coming out of the Vatican, like the schismatics in the church, though they weren't using that term so much, like you said, until the next year. Together with right-wing Protestants in America, it's like, shouldn't you like even an ecumenism of hatred? But that came out of the previous summer. Then, of course, we had summer of 2018, where you and I met and became friends. And it's like, after that, the rest is history, right? It's a fait accompli.
Progressives don't have principles. You know, they'll say one thing one day and they turn around the next day and completely contradict themselves, and they have a complicit media that doesn't call them on it. You know, the complicit media that goes along with statements like "I will say no more on this." So they're never taken to task for their obvious and blatant contradictions. It's inherent in progressivism that what they say today, they'll turn around and just fully contradict tomorrow. So ecumenism is good. Oh, well then, right-wing Catholics and right-wing Protestants, we're working against the powers that be who are trying to foist a progressive agenda on us. Well, suddenly ecumenism is not so sexy anymore.
Once they start dunking the idols. Yeah.
I'm reminded, last comment here real quick. I'm reminded of the prophet Jeremiah when the people were in exile. And he was so frustrated with the people, not because they were in exile and they had to fight it out, but he was mad that they didn't even know that they were in exile. That was his big thing. And I think Catholics prior to 2018 didn't know we were in exile, and now more and more are waking up to, oh my gosh, what are we doing in Babylon? We should be back in Jerusalem. But then even the Catholics that wake up, this is why it's probably worse than we think. Even the Catholics that wake up and are like, okay, we're in exile, they don't even want to return to Jerusalem. They would just rather just stay, and so we've got to pray. Anyways, I was just thinking about the prophet Jeremiah. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Taylor. That was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. You guys are doing a good job, and keep it up. Rules for retrogrades.
Thanks Taylor. Yeah. We appreciate it. Yeah, best of luck to you.
It's good to see. You, bearded Marshall.
Yeah. No shave November.
What's the plan? You gonna keep that beard?
I don't know. I'll probably shave it off once November's over. We'll see.
Dave, well, speaking of December, I know the most important question in my brother's mind is who do you got, Joshua or Ruiz in December? I'm going to be at the Holy League conference that date.
Oh, yeah.
The rematch. Who do you got? We argue incessantly over the
I don't really know. I mean, hasn't Ruiz been having a bad run? Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, Ruiz is. I mean, It's really Joshua that had the bad run. He had the run
maybe I got
with
confused.
Ruiz, who took the belts. And I mean, you look at the two guys standing toe to toe, and it's comical. You know, little Ruiz looks like the guy that if he didn't steal your.
Wait, is Ruiz the guy who fought this past weekend?
No, that's Ortiz. Different fighter of a Hispanic background.
Right.
No, Ruiz is the one that looks like he's never run anywhere. You know, Ruiz has never been put in the same sentence as run. He looks like he slayed every Twinkie from here to Kingdom Come.
You should say that to his face, Dave.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pass on that.
Yeah, and Anthony Joshua is looks like every heavyweight boxer in a movie. They're way too strong to be an actual heavyweight boxer. But when you see the guys, you need to Google it next, Taylor. It's amazing that Ruiz beat Joshua. And this is the rematch. They had an automatic rematch contractually. And December 7th is the date. It's a big deal. I lost a bet on this, the Ortiz fight. I was trying to bet the odds.
You bet the odds, not the fighter. Put your money on Joshua for this. It's just not even. It's not.
You know what you guys should show on?
It's gonna be.
I did a show over a year ago on UFC, but you guys should do ethics of fighting. I like to watch the rules for retrograde on that, because there's a lot of Catholics who get all bent out of shape on it. I think fighting is fine. I think martial arts are great. I think every sport introduces damage to the body. That's part of it. So I don't think that's an ethical argument, but I would love to see a rules for retrograde on the ethics, the Catholic ethics of combat sports. I think it'd be awesome. You guys would do a great job.
It was going off on Twitter on that, actually. And we were talking with Steve Skojek, I believe it was, on Twitter. And I actually took a picture of Heribert Jonet, the moral theology manualist. And he says there's nothing inherently wrong with prize fighting. And I think that was written in the days of bare knuckle boxing. So he was just like, the rules could be tinkered with now, I think, in terms of safety. But most of the moralists categorize things like prize fighting under the heading of the inherently dangerous jobs. So it would be like being a worker at a steel plant, maybe, or I don't know, a professional stuntman or something. You're not intending the injury. And
yeah, but they're gonna say, but you're punching the head. That's what they'll say.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'd be right. Unless you're talking about a very unsuccessful
they say
fight.
Is actually safer, because the way you fought, you put less power into the fist, or you would break your fist. It was more of a jabbing game, the bare knuckle. And also, how people used to fight like that?
Yeah, Irish style.
Well, they say that right there is to save the hand. That when you come in like this, the way the hand is built, it will break more easily. So if you fight more on the outside of the hand, they say, if you're bare knuckle, it preserves it for longer in the fight. That's why you see them doing this kind of old school thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's what they say. I don't know if it's true.
Me and Dave will put that on YouTube or something later. We'll have to do a bare knuckle thing. No, I mean, but I think you can always reduce it to final causation. All of these heavyweight fighters where, occasionally there is a death in the ring. There was on one of the undercards a death in the ring back in October. Final causation matters, right? It's like almost none of these guys, unless you talk to Mike Tyson, say that they're in the ring trying to hurt anybody. And this is the difference between, I think Oliver Wendell Holmes would talk about, even a dog knows the difference between being tripped over and, being kicked. The final cause, people think it's weird subjectivism. It's not, but it is. It's Catholic non-relativistic subjectivism that the final cause determines what an act is in cases like, okay, if you're trying to box to win the match and you want to just get a win out of an inherently dangerous sport with the least damage done, which is pretty much what all of them want. If somebody gets a cut in the eyebrow and he's going to get a TKO win because the cut was caused by a fist rather than the headbutt in the second round, I think he'd rather get that. He just wants the dub. And that changes the moral situation. Maybe we should do a show on it.
And we're not proportionalists.
When the final bell rings, they embrace each other. It shows that there's no malice in it. It's a sport. So y'all should do a show on it. It'd be kind of cool.
in general, Taylor, we talked about this a lot. I think we talked about it with Pat Coffin. There's just far too much of this pearl clutchery trying to get you for saying you liked some. I mean, our vision is to be given to us directly by the man himself, is to be in the world and not of the world. We don't have to spurn everything fun or cool or MMA or boxing or basketball. Don't a lot of basketball players, drink alcohol, right? You don't even have to spurn alcohol. There's too much of that. And
everybody needs to get hit in the jaw hard once. Everybody needs it.
Right. And a lot of these people critiquing us need it soon.
Yeah. I mean, everybody needs to be in combat, and especially men and not women, but I mean, men need to take some hits. And, I was at jiu-jitsu 2 weeks ago, and I took a guy down, and I went down and my jaw hit his knee really hard.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was all messed up, and I couldn't talk. And I thought, well, I should probably go home and put some ice on this. And I was like, no, I need to learn the lesson of what it feels like to hurt your jaw and then continue to fight for 10 minutes. Like, that's going to happen one day in a tournament. And just as a man, you need to know I can still finish a job even though I'm in pain. I can still put ice on it 30 minutes after what I was hoping for, and life is going to be okay. My jaw feels fine. It's great. No problem. That's a life lesson. I want all of my sons to experience that.
And it seems like that's left the church. On the Newman List campuses, I've walked around and I've seen a lot of guys that look like not only have they never been in a fight, but they've never lifted a weight and they've never done a hard job with their hands before. And that's really that's on the fathers. The fathers are defaulting. You can't be raising these limp-wristed Chatelaine-looking boys and think that you did your job just because they go around saying their Hail Marys. There's more to being a man than just praying, although praying and living the sacramental life is our highest calling. But we don't divorce the flesh from the spirit. We're Catholics, not dualists.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's all these great stories of priests teaching boys how to fight, how to box. That used to happen at churches.
Yeah. Yeah, so many
Marciano, right, was the only undefeated heavyweight.
Yeah.
Right?
He's Catholic,
Rocky Marciano. Yeah, daily masculine Catholic, 49-0. Yeah. Retired undefeated. Yeah. So there's a long tradition of Catholics in these combat sports because they're not intrinsically evil. What we were saying earlier, there would be no analysis for it if fighting were intrinsically evil. No analysis would be enough to cover our bases, just like there's no sufficient reason to have an abortion or to euthanize somebody, right? But since fighting is only circumstantially disordered, as long as there's a good enough reason to be fighting, then it's totally morally licit. And when you look at
parting shot, though, even if it were intrinsically evil, Trent Horn says it can be conditioned historically. And then you wait till the next day, and the historical evil that's intrinsic evil might flip-flop and be okay the next day.
If there was a Catholic Answers article on it, they will go there and change the previous answer on whether boxing is evil, and then it will just no longer exist, and then they will snark at you from Twitter. Especially if you post a video of a fight. Sorry, Taylor.
This was unbelievable. I mean, we shouldn't make it the parting shot, but it's my fault that it is. Taylor, did you see that they changed the article without?
No, I didn't see the article, but I saw your chatter on Twitter that they were editing, or they did edit a previous Catholic Answers document.
They flipped it from like opposite to opposite. A priest sent me the original article. He happened to have a copy of the text, and it's like, come on, guys, we all are rooting for you. We don't think you're National Catholic Reporter. We don't think you're Massimo Fagioli. We want you guys to just come back to the light because everyone's rooting for you. Just stop this funny business and make good with Marshall and make good with the Life Site crowd. Make good with Voris. Make good with us. And let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
Well, let me give this parting shot. Let me give this parting shot. Also, I think, in 2020, I said we're going to see more of a European awakening. I also think, sadly, there'll be more fragging going on the conservative to rightish wing of Catholicism.
Why?
because we're now in a battle and we don't know who's on our team.
Right.
2 years ago, I would have thought Catholic Answers and Trent Horn was on my team. Now, I've never said a word of my life about Trent Horn, and he's punching right to me on Twitter out of nowhere. I've never said a word about the man in private or public, and all of a sudden I'm getting heat from him. So we're going to start, for some reason, I think in order to be a strong army, we have to know who's with us. And so now all of a sudden everybody's jittering around, and we're figuring out when the dust settles, who's with me and who's not with me. Are the elves and the dwarves going to fight together or not?
We need to handle our business.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be that's one of my projections for 2020. We'll see a European rising and of conviction. And we're also going to continue to see interchurch fighting, trying to figure out how do we unite or not unite, and what is our platform and how we're going to address this.
That's interesting. I mean, it's like the fifth parting shot now, or is it the sixth? The funny thing is, I mean, you can look at this a couple different ways, but we need to know. I mean, I think the Catholic populism, let me put it this way, the Catholic spring that the Democrats were looking for right before the 2016 presidential election, it really backfired on them, because if a given outfit or apostolate is not on the right side of things, Taylor, then I don't think the people, at least in America, we got this rebel spirit. I don't think American Catholics are going to stand for it. So I mean, that's the downward force. You're talking about the upward force, the downward force on fence-sitting outfits like Catholic Answers. We all know we want them on our side. Will they come on our side? Well, I don't know. But I don't think the people out there are going to stand for not being on the right side of history.
No, why are you going to donate money? Why are you going to support these people and vote with your feet if they're not going to be on your side, if they're not going to have your back when it really matters, when stuff goes down? That's when you need the Catholic apostolates, these information apostolates.
By the way, Tim just quoted Hillary Clinton, but anyways.
Wait, you don't do that, Chris?
It's okay to do.
My go-to quotes.
She's
just kidding. People are going to be like, Dave likes Hillary Clinton. In the comments where everyone rips what you say out of con. Dave is a Hillary supporter. That's what I'm getting from this. Yeah. I don't like that.
She's a brave witch, bro.
A handsome woman.
Hey, man, she puts on her pantsuits one leg at a time, just like everybody else. Get off her case.
And shoulder pads? She does those 2 at a time.
All right, well, let's call this beast. Taylor, it's been great.
Any more parting shots?
Citizen Kane, your thoughts.
Nice beard. I like the bearded marshal. He looks very stately. Yeah, the blue blazer looks good too, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on with us.
Yeah, great to be with you. Great to riff again, Tim. Keep up the good work, Chris, Dave.
Thank you.
Nice talk, Taylor.
All right,
peace.
Keep it real.
Always keep it real.